Good morning and welcome to this Monday, January 31st, 2022, 9:03 a.m. briefing between the joint chambers of the Hawaii State Legislature, featuring the Senate Committee on Health, the Committee on Agriculture and Environment, and the Senate Committee on Water and Land, and the Health Committees on Health, Human Services and Homelessness, Energy and Environmental Protection, and the Committee on Water and Land, to hear a briefing today from the U.S. Navy, the Hawaii Department of Health, and associated agencies on the Red Hill Shaft Recovery and Monitoring Plan, which was signed last week and begun initiation over the weekend. I'd like to start by thanking our guests and members of the committee for joining us. I'm joined on the Health Committee. My name is Senator Jared Kilhokalole. I'm joined by my Vice Chair, Senator Roz Baker, and members, Senators Joyce Ann Buenaventura, Sharon Moriwaki, and Kurt Favela. We also have here our Senate Committee on Agriculture Chair, Senator Gabbard. Would you like to introduce the members of your committee?
Hello, thank you, Chair. Mike Gabbard, representing Senate District 20 in West Oahu. And I'm not seeing anyone else here. Senator Favela is here with us, and others will be joining, I'm sure, shortly. Thank you, Chair.
And because of its impacts, the plan's impacts to our water resources, we're also joined by the Senate Water Land Committee Chair, Senator Inouye. Would you like to introduce your members?
Okay, good morning. I have, we're not sure if who's attending today, but if they are, I think they'll end up joining us soon as they get into the building or wherever they are. But I think Senator Favela will be on soon. Otherwise, for now, it's just myself.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'll now turn it to my House counterpart, Chair Yamane, for introduction of House members.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
I'm here with you, Inouye. Senator Inouye.
Good.
Okay, we got you. We got you,
Senator.
Senator. Okay, so thank you, our Senate counterparts. Where again, the House stands with you. Today, I have not only the Committee on Health, Human Services, and Homelessness, but we also have the joint committees of Energy and Environmental Protection and the Committee on Water and Land. I'll turn it over. We do have various House representatives going to be chiming in, but offhand I can see Representative Branco, Representative Martin. I know I saw Chair Lowen and then Chair Tarnas. I see Representative Capella. My Vice Chair, Rep Tam, and I think that's the representatives here.
Representative Morikawa.
Oh, and our Majority Floor Leader, Representative Morikawa, all the way from Kauai. But I'll turn it over for Chair Lowen to do any introductions, and then over to Chair Tarnas. Okay, Chair Lowen.
Sure. Good morning, Rep Lowen. I represent House District 6. I see my Vice Chair, Rep Martin, and I'm not sure who will be joining us. If they're not on the call already, I can't see everyone, but the members of EEP committee are Reps Hashem, Matayoshi, Peruso, Todd, Tokioka, and Matsumoto. Thank you.
Thank you. And for Water and Land, I'm here as Chair, David Tarnas, House District 7, Kohala, Big Island of Hawaii. And my Vice Chair, Rep Patrick Branco, and committee member, Representative D. Morikawa, and Representative Bertrand Kobayashi. Back to you, Chair Yamane.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, Chair Keokolole, back to you.
Okay, great. So now I'd like our guests who are joining us for presentations today to quickly introduce themselves and their teams. We'll start with the U.S. Navy. Admiral Korka. Okay, we have you now.
Chair. Thank you, Chair and committee members. Good morning and aloha. Thank you for allowing us to present before your committee. With me, I am Admiral John Corca. I actually am headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I have been on the island of Oahu since 7 December, working this water crisis here on island. And with me to my right and to your left is Captain Mike Mino. Captain Mino is actually part of the Interagency Drinking Water Systems team. So he is with us today for presentation, as well as to your right and my left, Mr. Travis Hilton, who is our Director for Environmental here at the Naval Facilities Engineering Command Pacific on Oahu.
Thank you very much, Admiral. We'll now go to the Department of Health.
Good morning, senators and representatives. My name is Kathy Ho. I'm the Deputy Director of Environmental Health. Along with me today is Joanna Cito, who is the Environmental Health Division Chief, Phoenix Grange, who is the Section Supervisor for Site Assessment and Remediation for the Hazard Evaluation and Emergency Response Office, and Matt Carano, who is the Section Supervisor for Enforcement at the Clean Water Branch.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move to the Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Aloha, everyone. Kaleo Manuel, Deputy Director with the Water Commission, but here as point for DLNR and the Commission on Water Resource Management. Mahalo.
Thank you, Kaleo. We also have the Honolulu Board of Water Supply.
Aloha and good morning, everybody. Ernie Lau, Manager and Chief Engineer for the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. I have also with me Mr. Erwin Kawata, Head of our Water Quality Division. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ernie. And we're also joined by the University of Hawaii.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Vasilis Sirmus. I'm the Vice President for Research and Innovation at UH System. Today with me, I have Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas is a hydrogeologist and a faculty member at Hawaii Institute of Geology and Planetology. I also have with me Dr. Tao Yan. Dr. Tao Yan is with the Water Resources Research Center here at UH, and he's a microbiologist by training. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Are those all the entities? Did I miss anyone? I know we had initially asked the EPA to join us as well, but they were unable to attend. Okay, seeing none, members, we're now going to move into presentations. There are two presentations we'd like to have today. One, we'll begin with the Department of Health to give us a general overview of the state response to the water crisis and a summary of the Red Hill Shaft Remediation and Monitoring Plan. Also, some comments from some of the partners who have been working on that plan as well. And then we'll have the Navy present on the plan itself, the objectives, actions to date, and the conditions that they'd like to see for success. Hopefully we'll have about 45 minutes thereafter for members to ask questions. I'd like to note we've had a number of briefings on this issue. There are, in my mind, essentially three pieces to the Red Hill water contamination crisis. One is the Navy water system, the Navy water system contamination and the plan to flush out those distribution lines and homes to get residents back into their homes. The second part, and the part we'll be discussing today, is the overall impact to the island aquifer, the Red Hill water shaft itself, and what we do about that. And then the third part, which has been discussed and will continue to be discussed, are issues around the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility and underground storage tanks in general. We would like to focus the substance of this briefing today on the second piece, the Red Hill shaft contamination, the plan today that will be presented on how to deal with that, remediate, and continue to monitor for larger aquifer impacts. So I'd like to ask the members for your patience on that, and during Q&A, if we can hopefully, as much as possible, focus on that issue in the limited amount of allotted time we have today. And on that note, I'd like to ask Deputy Ho at the Department of Health to please proceed.
Kathy, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you on this, this matter, this very important matter. We view this as, in addition, we view this as three distinct parallel missions, and that is to protect public health and the environment. We did so through the administrative order and consent and the emergency order. I'd like to note that on that we have done as a result of the emergency order, prior to the emergency order, we asked that all people on the Navy's distribution system to stop drinking the water. And then we issued the emergency order. I see the emergency order as really taking two parallel tracks, and which is the return of the water to the Navy distribution system in a safe, methodical, based on science matter. The second part of it, which is what we're here to talk to you about today, is the aquifer recovery and groundwater modeling. And that is really to restore the, try to prevent and mitigate the further contamination of the aquifer to the system. And with that, I will turn it over to, next slide, please. I'll turn it over to Matt to explain the Red Hill Shaft Recovery and Monitoring Plan. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Kathy. You know, thank you everybody that's part of this. With our limited time, I'll jump right in. You know, talking about this third piece about the Red Hill Shaft Recovery and Monitoring. Like all things, when there's some kind of a disaster or incident, the first thing we got to do is stop the bleeding. And that's kind of what this plan is structured to do. It's structured in almost chronologically, like immediate actions, intermediate actions, and long-term actions that need to be taken for the overall mission. The immediate action, as everybody knows, divers went in and started skimming free product from the top. That was just the no-brainer, obvious, low-hanging fruit. What took a little bit more engineering and we call more of an intermediate action is, as that product was sitting on the top, the fuel degrades and it goes into the water body itself. The water in the aquifer is not static. It's not so much of a bucket as a slow moving river. We need to make sure that we draw out any of that contamination that may be degrading into the Red Hill Shaft, really to prevent it from migrating. It's more about stopping any further contamination as much as we can. And so those two actions are underway, as Senator said. You know, we are skimming and absorbing material off the top as it drops in. But this weekend, the Navy started pumping under this plan to extract the water, any kind of contamination in the water body itself, bring it up, treat out all of that contamination before discharging it into the stream. But as part of the plan itself, that keeps us from making the event worse as much as we can. And like we kind of said, mitigation. However, we also have to figure out long-term what we're going to do to really meet the mission, which is return this aquifer to service, return the Red Hill Shaft and drinking water source to service, and really recover is the operative word from the incident. So the plan also includes long-term type actions, like commitments and obligations to the Navy to conserve water through reuse, to have projects that recharge the aquifer. The water that we drink out of the aquifer today, or pumping out of the aquifer today, didn't rain yesterday. You know, as we all know in Hawaii, the water that falls on our ground takes a long time to really purify and get to drinking water through the ground. And then lastly, possibly taking other steps necessary to put in treatment systems to really restore the Red Hill Shaft as a drinking water source. Next slide, please. So this weekend, you know, we've already been doing the immediate skimming, but this weekend the Navy turned on their pumps, put the treatment system into effect that extracts up to 5 million gallons of water from the shaft every day. That drops the level in the shaft, kind of creates this negative space. That water gets pumped up, it gets treated to have the removal of the fuel and its degraded products through treatment through a hybrid. We keep referring to it as activated carbon system, which it primarily is, but it does have a hybrid component of it with zeolites. It can strip out any fuel-free product. And then discharging right across from animal quarantine, if you're familiar, that's actually where it's located, into Halava Stream. As part of that, there has to be monitoring. So the monitoring on the back end is really confirmation. We call it compliance monitoring to make sure that that water was clean enough not to damage the stream. But there's also process control monitoring on the front end, because we want to be able to detect any type of impacts or upsets to the treatment system, not be detecting it in the stream itself or as part of the discharge. So I hope that that kind of answers it. The monitoring is multi-level, again, process control, discharge monitoring that we do standard under, we call it NPDES program or permits that the DOH issues, but also with ecological monitoring that maybe our partners can talk about a little bit after. So thank you. That kind of gives a highlight of the immediate actions, the intermediate actions, and ultimately, I think my colleagues will talk about a little bit more of the long-term actions. Thank you. I'll hand that over to Phoenix if we can start talking about some of the longer-term actions.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Phoenix Grange. I have a few different roles, one with the administrative order on consent. Been working on this project for about 4 years on the environmental end, particularly with respect to the subjects we're going to be talking about here. So throughout the, for many years since the AOC went in place, we've been having the Navy sample groundwater and report it to us on a regular basis. When the May release happened, we increased that amount of sampling so we could get a better idea of what happened during that release. We did that again after the November release and are actively involved in the emergency response, working with Navy and other SMEs, other subject matter experts from other agencies as well, including the EPA, to learn as much as we can about what's happening in the groundwater now. That we know for sure that product made it to the groundwater table and into the shaft, and unfortunately into people's taps. And so the more quickly we can gather information and understand what those processes are, the better we're going to be able to both contain the release, as Matt mentioned, and remove product that arrives in the shaft. So those are immediate actions, but we're also collecting data now that will help us to figure out the longer term solutions. So in particular, and you'll hear a little bit more from the Navy about this, there's some new investigations going on around the sources of the release from November. So including new data collection in the tunnel and a variety of different studies that we have been involved in overseeing and approving that we think will help us with those data. One of the key questions that we have is about how water might be moving during this period when there has been no pumping. So with all 3 shafts off, that changes the way the groundwater normally functions. And so we are keeping a very close eye to on how that contamination might be moving so that we can get early indicators of possible risks to Halava Shaft and other water supplies in the immediate area. And I'd be happy to answer more questions later. I think we can go on from there. Great, thank you. Matt, I believe this is back to you.
Joanna?
Oh.
Yes, hi. Good morning. My name is Joanna Cito. I'm the Environmental Management Division Chief, and I am going to be discussing the water resource impact offsets, which are in Section 6 of the Red Hill Shaft Recovery and Monitoring Plan. This identifies the initial and long-term offsets and mitigation requirements for the Navy's impacts to our water resources. The longer action is to bring the Red Hill Shaft back as a source of drinking water after review and approval by the Department's Safe Drinking Water Branch. Water reuse includes treatment of the contaminated groundwater to an acceptable quality for irrigation and other non-potable uses. Future groundwater conservation includes the use of R1 quality effluent from the NAPVAC wastewater treatment plant for irrigation and other non-potable uses. Water creation includes protection and enhancement of the forests in the Pearl Harbor watershed for water recharge, the movement of rainwater to the groundwater aquifer instead of flowing directly to the streams and ocean. The Navy will seek to find beneficial use of the water from the Red Hill shaft until it is deemed potable or a capture zone is no longer required. The Navy has already begun the processes to attain funding to implement these offsets. Note that all projects shall not require state matching funds. Kathy?
Thank you, Joanna. So we have reached out to our partners and have coordinated our work with the EPA, DLNR, City and County, the USGS, and the University of Hawaii. Some of these members are here today. I don't know what our timing is, but they are here today, and I'm sure they're able to respond to any questions later. Next slide, please. As you know, the DOH's mission is to protect public health and the environment, and we take this seriously. We hope to return the system, the drinking water system, the distribution system, back to a safe manner in a methodical, based on science and safe for human consumption. In addition, we hope to do the same methodical scientific approach to the protection of our aquifer. With that, we look forward to responding to any questions you might have after the Navy's presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's thank you very much for that. Admiral Corca, please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you again, Chair and the committee members. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Kathy and her team, Matt, Phoenix, and Joanne. I think they did a great job with the subject matters, and I think it links in very well with what you're going to hear from the Navy. I want to start off with something that the chair noted early on, that we had three primary objectives: was to restore the safe drinking water system for the Navy's distribution system, remove the contaminant, and protect the aquifer. And today's focus is going to be on the activities that's currently ongoing at Red Hill. Happy to entertain any questions during the Q&A sessions on anything that you may have in the interest. When I testified before Congress not too long ago, one of the items that I mentioned was that we cannot do this alone. The coordination, collaboration, and transparency with the state of Hawaii and federal agencies and our sister services is absolute. And I continue to focus on that because it is about this, as Dr. or Kathy Ho said, about the safety and the protection of all people here on the island. I want to draw your attention to Red Hill in particular. There's a lot of activity going on. This is a slide that I shared with Congressman Kahili not too long ago on what is happening at Red Hill. I want to draw your attention to our lines of operations on the top right. And one of them talks about the contaminant removal. I believe Matt mentioned about that, what we're doing with skimming operations. The second one is the contaminant control, which is the GACs, and we'll go into detail with that, which again is an immediate. It's not the solution set, it's the immediate actions that we're taking. And then, of course, the site characterization, which is very, very, very important, so we can develop both the intermediate and long-term solution at Red Hill. So I want you to know that what we're doing today does not stop anytime on the horizon. It's going to be a continued operations up at the Red Hill. If you look on the legend, everyone is very familiar, obviously, with the field farm. That is about 3/4 of a mile away from the actual Red Hill well. Okay, so that's a good distance. Granted, it is definitely over the aquifer. But what I wanted to share with you is that we mentioned that we actually have monitoring wells, 20 of them around the site. And as mentioned earlier, that the periodicities of us sampling those has increased to weekly. So we are taking weekly sampling of that. But also in the last week, we worked with USGS, and we actually installed transducers in each one of these wells so we can get a greater appreciation of the flow. Okay, so that was a recent activity that was performed. As you move to the left, you'll see the development tunnel, and you'll see ROV, which is a remote operating vehicle. We actually deployed a vehicle in the well that scanned the entire, and the video is available, that we will be happy to share if you haven't seen it, to look inside the development well to see where there are injection points. Our divers could only go about 350 feet horizontally. And so what this vehicle allowed us to do was go the entire distance, about 1,000 feet, to actually see where you can see seepage of some contaminants going into the well. And that has been very helpful for us to get a characterization of what we're actually looking at. And I think it'll provide, be helpful as we work the GAC operations. If we cease it, we can put the remote operating vehicle back into the tunnel for some visual. You'll see this the soil vapor pins. Since the spill occurred back in November, actually, we installed 52 vapor pins. And again, we are actually looking at monitoring these pins as part of our evolution. So in addition to the groundwater wells that we're monitoring, we're also monitoring the vapors. That is where we know a release occurred. And that is something that we want to continue to explore. Earlier was mentioned that the divers continue to do skimming operations with the absorbance of booms. That operation has ceased since we started the GAC operations. The GAC operations, I'm going to hold off on particulars because I'm going to allow Captain Mino to explain that in details, where we're taking tests, how often we're taking tests. But that is another area of operations that we have underway. I would also like you to note that we have taken some soil samples, okay, right before the Halava stream. So we took soil borings. Those are under analysis as we speak, because we do believe that there was some releases in that area from the leach tank, and we want to make sure that we're having a good characterization of exactly what's going there. And of course, the Halava stream, which I know is everyone's really paying attention to, as rightfully as everyone should. And we have partnered with the University of Hawaii that's actually taken samples of the stream to monitor for the ecosystems before, during, and after the discharge. Because again, it is about protecting the environment, and that is one thing that we don't want to do from a destruction standpoint. And I will tell you that also that we are planning to install more monitoring wells around the site as well. Okay, we want to actually go outside the Red Hill area. This is something that we're in discussion. I think that's going to be happening. That will require some permitting and approval, which I feel comfortable that the state will support. But we really need to focus on urgency. Because I think that's going to allow us to assist with our characterization of what's going on. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to go on to the next slide. So if you could turn to the next slide, please. And I'm going to turn this over to Captain Mike Mino, and we're going to talk specifically on the operations of the GAC systems that is currently underway, that started this past weekend. So, Mike.
Yes, sir. I'd like to thank all the committees for giving us the opportunity to brief each and every one of you. As many of you know, the Red Hill Shaft Recovery and Monitoring Plan was signed last week, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank everybody that was a part of that, especially the Department of Health team, including Kathy, Matt, Phoenix, and Joanna. I personally spend a lot of time with them as a member of the IDWST, and I can say I've never found a more hardworking and dedicated group of people, and that I think the state of Hawaii could and should be proud of their efforts because they have put in an unbelievable amount of time to make this a reality. And with that said, the recovery is really about creating the capture zone that Matt talked about to buy us time to figure out what needs to be done. So as part of that process, and to ensure that we're returning the safe water to the environment at the Halava stream, we've installed a 5 MGD, 5 million gallon per day, granulated activated carbon water treatment plant. There's essentially the water from the Red Hill shaft gets pumped up. It gets pumped up to a treatment system that includes 2 tanks. There's currently at Red Hill 4 treatment lines. 3 of them remain in operation at one time, and the 4th one is allowed to maintenance to occur without having to reduce the flow of the plant. The first lead vessel, as you see on the drawing, has zeolite, which is an organic clay that allows for variability in the influent potential fuel levels, TPH to be more specific. There was a lot of uncertainty on how high that initial concentration would be, and that clay allows it to take high variable amounts without breaking through the granulated active carbon. After it passes through the top of the carbon, after it passes through the top of the clay, it goes through the carbon and then goes to a second tank in which it is completely passes through carbon. And then it is discharged to the Halava stream, where you saw pictures earlier from the Department of Health. We test the influent, and we test between the 2 tanks, and we also test the effluent using process controls. Currently, we have a portable unit on site that's being used to make sure that we know what the influent is, as well as the effluent, as well as taking the formal samples that Matt Crono talked about to ensure compliance with our NPDES permit. The duration is really based on the site characterization effort that will allow us to determine what the appropriate remedial technology is to remove the contamination in that area and return the Red Hill shaft back to potable water use. And so that site characterization, that groundwater modeling, is critical to our ability to determine an appropriate remediation technology. The plan coordination, which I alluded to just by the thanks to the Department of Health team, it also included a lot of other folks. You can see on the bottom right, we had experts from the EPA, we had constant support from DLNR, and our interagency drinking water system team, which covered this this treatment, the Red Hill recovery and monitoring plan, also was supported by the Aquifer Recovery Focus Group that included DOH, EPA, the Navy, University of Hawaii, Board of Water Supply, USGS, and the city and county of Honolulu. As Admiral Korka alluded to, it has been a team effort, and I believe the team has been focused on protecting human health and protecting the environment by protecting the aquifer. Monitoring for environmental protection was very, very important. We knew we were going to be adding fresh water to a stream that's usually only flowing during or after storm events. And so some of the things that were done, I'm going to actually introduce Travis Hilton. We'll talk about the environmental protection monitoring, which will also lead into the other information. So thank you. I'll be prepared to answer any questions specific to the plant. I'm going to ask Travis Hilton to talk a little bit about how we address the concerns, and then lead into the rest.
Yeah, let me, Travis, if I can. One thing I just want to make sure with the test samples, again, those are, we are actually sending those samples to the interagency team. And so again, if those are available upon request, we're really trying to figure out right now the protocol and how we post them. We're posting the results from our our distribution systems and eventually the home samplings results that we're doing right now with our water distribution efforts, but we want to do something very similar with this as well. So I wanted to make sure that the transparency is there in what we are seeing. So, Travis.
Okay, thank you, sir. Aloha, Travis Hilton here with NAPAC Pacific. And in the top right corner of the slide here, it addresses some of the concerns that have been expressed throughout this cooperative process. First of which is the impacts to the ecology of Halawa Stream and the Pearl Harbor estuary at the mouth of Halawa Stream. And to address that, we have entered into a cooperative agreement with University of Hawaii Stream Lab, and we'll be doing regular monitoring of terrestrial and aquatic biota throughout the stream. So we'll do this twice a week at 5 to 7 sites upstream and downstream of the discharge point, including in the estuary, characterizing any visible impacts to birds or fish or other aquatic biota, and also monitoring the biota through environmental DNA samples. So we've had a baseline that we've conducted about 18 months ago with the University of Hawaii Stream Lab to characterize the aquatic biota through sampling the DNA in the water of the stream. And from that, it can be compared against a repository of DNA information to characterize what actually lives in the stream, and it can be characterized in a passive, non-destructive way. And this second concern that we'd like to address is the discharge of the 5-MGD itself. Water is precious, and although this is seen as a clear imperative to do this pumping to create the contaminant capture zone, we don't want to see this 5-MGD go to waste. And so the Navy's recently awarded a contract to look into, as Joanna Cito had mentioned, beneficial reuse of this water. So we're canvassing the area near where the discharge is to see if there are any users in the industrial area that may be able to take a portion or all of that and put it to good use. And then we'll expand that search if we're not successful there to look to see if there's places where that water can be put to use through irrigation or potentially as recharge as well. And then the third concern is impacts to the area water balance. And this is another one that Joanna had mentioned with respect to offsets. We know that we're in a unique situation at this point with the Red Hill shaft turned off, the Navy's IAEA Halawa shaft turned off, the Board of Water Supplies Halawa shaft turned off, and a few IAEA Halawa area wells as well turned off. So with those wells resting, that water is being made up in different parts of the Pearl Harbor area and beyond. And so what we've done is we've awarded the first stage of a Pearl Harbor Water Resources Management Plan. And that plan will be looking to identify Navy projects and other opportunities in the areas of conservation, reuse, and recharge. And those are the three main areas that the Hawaii Freshwater Initiative is looking to capitalize and improve the water balance of the state. And then we're adding source protection and production capacity increases to, again, look at what we can do to lower the Navy's water footprint and increase the island water security overall.
Okay, next slide, please.
The next couple slides center on Halawa Stream, and again, the concerns are twofold: quantity and quality of the water being discharged. So addressing quantity first here, folks don't necessarily have an intuitive feel for what 5 million gallons per day looks like, and there's concern that this may flood downstream. Here to say today to say that the discharge will not cause flooding, and in fact, as part of the plan, should there be a flooding event, we will shut down the plant so as to not exacerbate any flooding downstream. But just for conceptual purposes, as the plant started up on Saturday, I was standing in the stream with the regulators, and it was essentially boot toe or so depth in there. So it's not a huge flow, and the channels and the infrastructure there are designed for stormwater routing in large events. And so compared to the events that channel is sized to convey, this 5 million gallons a day is relatively small. And the numbers you see here are from the USGS North Halava stream gauge. And before this project started up, we worked with the USGS to install a stream gauge on the South Halava stream, about 700 feet downstream of where the discharge point is. So we'll have full monitoring on the quantity of water discharged to the stream.
Next slide, please.
All right, and then the other concern, of course, is the quality of the water. So yeah, this is an environmental trade-off. It's very important to create the capture zone by pumping this water, but our mantra and directive with the interagency group has been to do no harm to the environment. So this has been designed to where we can be protective of the environment from a water quality perspective. So we are sampling water quality on 4 different levels. We're doing groundwater monitoring to see what the levels are as we do this pumping, to measure the effectiveness of creating a capture zone and corralling the contaminants on the water table, doing process monitoring throughout the granular activated carbon system at different points in the influent and intermediate and the discharge side of the plant to make sure that we're meeting all of our requirements there. And then we're doing a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDS, monitoring of the discharge before it goes into the stream. And I could say since startup, all of the levels for hydrocarbon have been below the detection level of the instruments that we're using to do this on an hourly basis on site. So the plant is performing as designed. There's also booms deployed in the stream at the point of discharge and at the mouth of the stream in Pearl Harbor, so as to, if any sheen were to develop, we'd have an opportunity to have a visual on that. And those are also checked periodically and inspected. And then, as I mentioned, we've got the ecological monitoring with the University of Hawaii, looking at the terrestrial and aquatic biota of the stream. And I've mentioned that we are letting a contract for the beneficial reuse of the water as well.
Okay. Next slide, please. Sorry, I know we're at the end of our time, so I'll go through these last few quickly. One of the things that I want to just add is that we mentioned about the contract that was awarded to get some ideas on what we can actually, how do we take this water and put it into other use. We expect to have scopes of what we can do within 2 weeks, and we'd be happy to share those as appropriate. Again, I want to just highlight our actions today in support of the emergency order. We are very mindful of that. As was during the testimony, the Navy is moving out. And in particular for us, what does that mean? Is efforts are underway for project development to design and construct a water treatment system in the vicinity of Red Hill. And I say the vicinity because I'm not going to make the assumption that we're going to be using the exact well as part of the distribution. A lot of the actions that are written in front of you on this slide, Travis and Captain Mino have already discussed. All those actions are critical because they will actually inform the design of any project that we construct. So the data and the analysis from that will be fed into activities and actions in the project development stage that the Navy has underway. Next slide. The last two slides that I would share with you is a depiction of our monitoring dashboards. These are dashboards that we look at. And on the left, you'll see the vapor monitoring reports that I mentioned earlier. What does that say? How is it interpreted? The assessment of those, as well as the groundwater wells. We are going to put these into a live dashboard. We're in the process of doing that so we can have full automation. So when we take the samples, we can put it into our database and we can instantaneously look at trends and analysis over time. I think this is very critical. Today we have information, it is on spreadsheets and we do something similar, but we want to make sure we take a best practice approach for the monitoring dashboards as well as our recovery. Last slide, please. The last slide really just shows you about the recovery. That is still under development. We know that that shows the GAC operations, the Halava stream. I mentioned about removing soil contaminants. I also talked about installing additional wells in the vicinity of Red Hill. And so we actually are developing a recovery dashboard so we can make sure that we are constantly monitoring the activities that are going on with Red Hill. That concludes our brief. Again, thank you for the time and the opportunity to share this with you. And we look forward to the questions and answers, sir. And I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Admiral and Captain and Mr. Hilton. I do want to leave as much time as possible for questions from the members. So I think we're gonna, at this point, I'd like to ask the Water Commission and the university and the Board of Water Supply, if you could just briefly take a couple of minutes and explain your role and the status of the situation as it currently presents, you know, in the hope that it might be able to help prompt some of the member questions since we have you folks and your expertise here. Thank you.
Hello, Chair. Kaleo Manu, Deputy again with the Water Commission. I think the Navy and Department of Health did a good job at summarizing the overall intent. From the Water Commission side, we're heavily focused and participate in the aquifer recovery focus group. A lot of our work is continuing to monitor our groundwater aquifer. So that's one core focus of the Water Commission. And then on the DLNR and Water Commission side, we are heavily involved in the Halava stream ecological surveys and assessment. So we're going to be working closely with University of Hawaii in their aquatic biota monitoring, as well as with USGS on the stream flow measurements and gauging. So that's generally where we're involved from the DLNR and Water Commission standpoint. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vasilis?
Good morning again. So as it was mentioned, the university has 3 projects. Actually, one project is underway. That is the project for the Halava stream monitoring. Dr. Chang from the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources is the lead for the university. It is a fortunate event that she had already collected baseline study 18 months ago. So now we can compare current results with the results from 18 months ago. Secondly, as mentioned by the Navy, we are in negotiation with the Office of Naval Research to conduct a hydrogeological study around the Red Hill and the aquifer. And thirdly, we have we are in the process of standing up a water quality test lab here at the Water Resources Center at the University of Hawaii through a grant from the Office of Naval Research and a partnership with naval facilities. So these are the 3 projects currently underway.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Ernie.
Thank you, Senator, and members. Board of Water Supply still has 3 wells that are still not operational because of the situation, our Halava shaft, AL wells, and Halava wells. We've reached out in addition to participating in some of the meetings with the Navy and the others. We reached out to the EPA and the Department of Health directly to begin open discussions and collaboration with the regulators in this situation. I actually look forward to getting access to more data, and the Navy's dashboard looked very impressive. So my request to the Admiral is, can we get direct access to that dashboard too? Mahalo.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that expedited update. And again, for all the presentations. So we can move to question and answer now, and I will turn it over to the House for the first question. Chair Yamane.
Thank you, Chair. Members, is there anyone that has a question? Chair Tarnas, Chair Lowen? Okay, it's Chair Lowen, go ahead.
Sure. I wanted to ask about the monitoring for like impacts to ecology. Will that be when that data is released, will it be publicly available, and how often will it be reported?
So let me any data that we collect, we have no, as I stated, we're not doing this alone. I talked about the collaboration, the transparency, and the coordination. So to answer your question, absolutely, it will be made available. The means on how we do that, I can't tell you right now, but I am committed to working with the interagency team to determine the best way to actually collect, portray, and release this information to the public.
I hope it happens in a timely way, so if there are impacts being detected, that we'll be aware of them in time to
Yes,
try to find ways to address them. And then I'm glad to hear you're looking at if there's any acceptable ways that water can be reused, and I look forward to hearing about that when you guys get that report back.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Back to you.
Senate members, questions?
Chair.
Senator Favela.
Before you guys started dumping the water in the Halava stream, it was data and testing done before water went into the stream on the how the stream is now at its present time, today's time, and then now dumping this very so-called clean water into all of this filter system, about millions and millions of gallons. How is that going to change the dynamics of the stream and the living organisms in there that is not used to of having that kind of clean water going through the streams, whether fish or shrimp, whatever is living in the water now, because you're talking about millions of gallons. It's going to change the dynamics of that stream. So did we have a real good testing on how the stream looks, not just in the area where the water goes, at least a mile in the area, so that you guys can go and look at what all of that water is going to do in hurting the environment in that stream?
Yes, sir. As mentioned, we do have a solid baseline from a comprehensive stream ecology report that was done 18 months ago with the University of Hawaii. And we have collected follow-up sampling in the same manner that we've done the previous study with the startup of the plant, to be able to immediately prior, and then we'll be sampling as we go after as well, to characterize any of those adjustments or changes that may be seen in the aquatic environment there. So we are covering that, and that's with the University of Hawaii. And as Mr. Manuel had mentioned, the Water Commission is very involved in that as well. We're looking at not just the ecology of the stream, but the flow characteristics of the stream. We've had the U.S. Geological Survey install a stream flow monitor downstream of the discharge, and they've been doing background or baseline seepage runs, which measure where the stream may be gaining water or losing water along its reaches. They did that prior to the release to set a baseline, and they'll be doing that in the future to see what the changed aspects of the stream flow may be.
You said how long you guys did it before you guys started this project? 18 weeks or how long?
So the comprehensive stream ecology study was 18 months ago, but immediately 2 weeks before we started the discharge, we had samples collected to facilitate another round of comprehensive stream ecology characterization.
The reason why I'm asking this is because it is a big concern in the area. So all of this data 18 months ago and the data you guys collected now, 18 months ago to now, is it the same data, or did it change a little bit, or did it change plenty?
It's the same methodology, sir.
Yeah, did it change though? I mean, did anything change between 18 months and now?
Oh, we don't have the results yet back for the sampling that was done a couple weeks ago.
The reason why I'm asking, you didn't get the results, but you guys are putting 3 millions and millions of gallons into the water. But how are you gonna have a consensus of the impact if it takes too long to get the results prior to you guys dumping the water into the stream? I understand the urgency to get the water filtered out, but I just wanted to, that was the quickest way, what I'm hearing, you know, how you guys saying the quickest way to do it. But then later on, what is the long-term impact? You know what I'm saying? The long-term impact is why I'm saying this is because the fix for Pearl Harbor was to leave the boats in the water and not to move them because it would cause a contamination into the water. But now we found out that that long-term effect is now hurting us. So that's why I'm saying we want to protect that water and the future of any water in the state for our Kiki, because now we wasn't watching too much with Pearl Harbor. Now we're getting the recourses of that tragedy that's happening in my community of all the water being polluted, no more limo, itchy water, water contaminants. But nobody will look into that because that wasn't the long-term plan. So you guys have this plan because you guys got to act now because the Navy is at fault. But what is the long-term effect when you guys are long gone from the state and our kids and our grandkids are going to live here having something go drastically wrong with the stream and everything around it after you guys leave? That's the worry that I have. Thank you, Chair.
Sir, if I may add just a few comments, if that's okay. One, your concerns is understandable. There's no ifs or ands about the value of what Pearl Harbor and its aquatics brings to this island. No one's going to question that. What I will tell you is that right now, the discharge that's coming out of that GAC system is clean. Okay, that is clean. Secondly, we will provide the data. I don't know when we're going to get the data from the test that we took from the 18 months, a valid point. Once we get that, I'm hoping here in the next coming days, if not coming weeks for sure, we'll make sure that we post that. And if there's any concerns, we're committed to come back to this committee and report those findings just to make sure that we've been very transparent.
Thank you, Chair. I just get one more, just a quick one. Reason why when I was growing up, my auntie them used to test the water in the streams in Kaneohe from the bottled water supply every day. Take samples. So when bottled water supply comes, they can continue to monitor the influx and the contamination or whatever's going into the stream. That's the reason why I'm bringing this up. Because back then, they checked the water really clearly. I understand how clean and how great this water is, but that means there's no nutrients in this water. This water is clean, too clean, basically what I'm saying, for the stream and the organisms that's in the stream. So you're gonna have too clean of a water for things that living in there that's not used to that kind of quality of water, the temperature, everything about the environment. That's what I'm bringing up. Because the water ecosystem in those streams and bottled water supply used to test it. they made sure they went and checked those samples. If that had anything to do with the environment, the heat, or anything that would kill the crayfish, prawns, the fishes in this water, they'll come out and they'll check out if there's any runoff from the banana patches or any place real quickly. But this water, what I'm saying is, I don't know how else to say it, too clean. I mean, you guys are saying how clean the water is, but if you live in a water that's not used to of having clean water, that will take away the oxygen, that will take away the living mechanism, it'll take a lot of things there. That's why I'm asking for this data. I mean, I understand the urgency of dumping the water and getting it out of there, but to the extent, and this is gonna be my final quote, to the extent of how long the effect is gonna happen, and it's gonna hurt the environment and the ecosystem going forward. That's what my concern is, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair Tarnas?
Thanks.
Actually, Chair,
Oh, sorry.
before we get to that, Senator Favela actually brought up a very specific point that we were briefed on at a site visit recently. So Admiral Corco, can you speak, or maybe the Department of Health, can you please speak directly to that concern about the water coming out of those gap filtration systems being too pure to be appropriately accepted in the environment once they're released into the halal stream?
I think they're frozen. Did you want Seaworm to respond?
Admiral, are you on though?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I didn't hear. I wanted to give Department of Health the opportunity first, but we're happy to respond to that. Travis, did you want to?
Sure. You respect to the water. Oh, Matt.
Yeah,
Did you
Chair and Senator, would you like, if you'd like, because excuse me, I was trying to raise my hand. Let me put it down. Your point is a good one, actually. Senator Favela's is a very good one too. Any disruption from the normal has a potential for negative impact. And I think we were really concerned about that. Unfortunately, with everything, you don't know until you know, right? So we had to set up the monitoring scheme from a water quality perspective, which is the charge of the Department of Health, but also the ecological impact perspective, which is principally the charge of the DLNR. But to Senator Favela's point, if you don't measure them before, but you measure them after, you cannot tell the difference. So what Travis Hilton and those folks kind of briefly discussed, but is they have DLNR, a big section of the monitoring plan is to do assessments, not just 18 months ago, because that was before all of this, but to come up with an ecological monitoring program for the birds, the shrimp, the fish, the stream itself. And they went in and they did those assessments before, and UH is going to be doing a lot of that. It's almost, independent in the sense that it's third party, and then they got to do them continuously through, because you got to see as it changes. Just the one thing is this stream is in fact a hardened channel. So it's not like a natural native type stream bed, which reduces some of the risk overall. But the point is a really good one. And especially with the environment, just because I do something today, I may not see it tomorrow too, right? That's a reality, right? Fish, and especially in Hawaii, we always use salmon as an example because that's a mainland example, but opo are the same way. They spawn up here in the upper area, but it goes into the ocean and comes back. And all of those totality of effects is what we need to be looking for.
Thank you for that. We'll yield to the House.
Oh, Chair, did you want Kaleo to from Seaworm to also chime in on that? No need.
If he has a comment.
Okay. No comment. Okay, good. Chair Tarnas.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask about your requirements for backwashing and cleaning these granulated activated carbon filters. How often are they cleaned, and what do you do with the backwash under your plan? Please let us know. Thanks.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
So the treatment and the backwashing, we'll be disposing of the carbon, unlike a typical sand filter where the media remains in place. And so that carbon will be removed when it is no longer usable. And
There is no backwash.
yeah, I guess the safe answer is there is no backwashing in the sense that you're probably prepared, but all the removal will be done in a way that ensures that any water that is they'll be drained. That water will be treated, and then the granular material will be treated as hazardous waste until tested and determined to be solid waste. And then the method of disposal will be determined on what that test is and what comes back. But based on the current levels that we're seeing, it's unlikely to be a hazardous waste, but I don't want to say that until a test is done.
Is it just real quick follow up? Is that the same with the clay that is in the first stage of the first tank? Is that also disposed of rather than backwashed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the way it works is it can be sent to a regeneration facility, but it's not in the traditional permanent filtration system like in a water treatment plant and or a pool system. Hopefully that answers your question, sir.
Yep, that answers it. And when they are replaced, when you replace the activated carbon or the clay, I'm sure that you'll notify DOH so that they know what's going on as well. So just keep us posted. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair Imani.
Okay, back to the Senate.
I have Senator Misalucha.
You know what? I'll defer to Senator Revere. I think he raised his hand first.
Okay, Senator Revere.
Okay, thank you all. I wanted to follow up on the line of questioning Rep. Tarnas just had, Chair Tarnas. What is the expected life of these GACs? How often will you need to be changing them out? At 5 million gallons a day, they would have a certain rated life. What is the budget for that? And then how long do you think you're going to be using them? And is this a permanent feature now to have these GACs in place, or do you envision disassembling them and taking them away? Could you please describe your plans for the GAC in the medium and long range? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Right now, based on the influent, we're seeing, which is under 100 parts per billion of TPH diesel. We believe that at least approximately 2 months of operation for each train until it has to be replaced. We'll watch that because if the concentration should change, it could drive the length. But right now, it's a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. Like it's the right level that makes this the right treatment technology. To answer your question about how long, at this stage, I think it's only premature because the site characterization has not been completed. Once that is, I think we'll be able to determine what the right remediation technology is. I think if you were to ask Dr. Thomas of University of Hawaii, and I don't want to speak for him, he would probably say that the current setup is probably not the most efficient or effective way, but it is the quickest way to create the safety of the capture zone. And then in regards to the permanent, is it permanent? This system was not meant to be permanent, but only to make sure that we had the ability to create a capture zone quickly so that we had time to do the longer site characterization to determine what the right treatment technology, remediation technology is, will work for the specific situation. Did that answer your question, sir?
Somewhat. So the 2 months, is that when you think you will be finished or when you think that you'll need to change out the filters? I didn't quite get the significance of the 2 month estimate.
Yeah. So we have to make sure that everyone understands, and I think it was alluded to. This is a condition-based approach. So you're going to be, the value of the monitoring and assessment is going to determine what your next steps are. Typically, we think that, again, it depends on how much contaminant you're removing, which will dictate when you replace your carbon. You know, the dirtier it is, you're going to have to change it earlier. Then it's clean, it can last longer. Right now, we would probably say about 2 months. Okay. I would also want to make sure that people understand that the GAC is a standard procedure that's used industry-wide to remove contaminants. I actually believe here on the island of Oahu, these same similar type of systems, they're probably hardened a little bit more, are used to remove pesticides. I mean, there is a means for just removing contaminants in general, monitoring it, and then also what do you do with the discharge? I really believe that the conversation earlier about, you know, just because it's clean water doesn't mean that it's good. I think it's very clear it does have a secondary effect on the aquatics, and we're very mindful of that. Hence, while we have a contract in place to see what we can do with that, so we're not putting it into the Halava stream. And so 2 months is probably how long we think. We'll continue to monitor and continue to provide updates to make sure that people understand it. There is a risk-based proposition. How fast do we want to remove the contaminants? Okay, we want to make sure it doesn't impact. The risk is now we're going to have to take water and put it into the Halava stream. So I know it may not be, and I apologize, sir, that it may not be a definitive answer, but the assurance is that there's a lot of different activities that are going on to make sure that this condition-based approach is done with transparency and people understand what the next activity would be.
Okay, thank you. And then just one final kind of corollary to this. Are you finished flushing all of the lines that go to the houses and the distribution network? And did you use some form of mobile trailered GAC system? How did you clean the network, and are you finished with that?
Yes, sir. I appreciate that question. So the water distribution system used a very similar method using mobilized granulated activated carbon. Okay, so it was the same process that we did to filter out the contaminants. Our distribution system has been completely flushed, and the results are being posted on publicly. And this is done in collaboration with the interagency team. The home flushings that we have 19 different zones, and hopefully everyone has seen the map. We have finished probably around 80% of all the home flushing. And when I say home flushing, I mean home flushing and sampling. And so we should be finishing, we got about, of the 9,000, we got about 2,000 homes remaining. A little over 1,400 of those homes are actually at Iroquois Point. And we'll be doing those flushings and testing this week, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Before I move on to other members, the Chair of Health has a question for both the UH and for the Navy. You mentioned that the University of Hawaii will be standing up a lab. I think it's with donated or given equipment to the university. When is this going to be up and running? And what is the scope in which UH will be providing the testing results to the state? And what should we expect? When should we be getting daily, more efficient, quicker updates on the water quality?
I can take that question, Representative Yamani. We have not received yet the equipment. I think the equipment will be received sometime in beginning of February. I believe it's going to take 2 to 4 weeks to set up the lab, train the people, because the company that will bring the equipment also will provide the training. And then after that, we can provide results daily from the samples we will be getting to test. I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not an EPA certified laboratory. We're not planning at this time to have quality assurances and quality control processes for the lab to be qualified for that certification. We feel comfortable that the results are going to be precise and they're going to be accurate, but getting up to the QAs and QCs for an EPA certification is a very expensive proposition. And we don't want to go into that because we don't know the cost and the length of time.
So just to clarify then, the results from the tests in 2 to 4 weeks, will that be accepted by EPA and DOH as approved quality ratings in regards to the monitoring of not only the wells, but the discharge?
I can try to answer that, but DOH can answer that question as well. DOH can accept the data, but it cannot be used for regulatory purposes. For regulatory purposes, the lab has to be EPA certified. There is no EPA certified lab at this time on island.
Okay, so that just results in that we will continue to have to send the samples to the mainland to get tested, right?
Correct, until we make a decision that we want to go through that certification process.
Okay. Okay, Department of Health, do you have any comments on that? No, they ran away.
Thank you. I think it's true that he Vasilis accurately depicted the situation. It is data that is not going to be used for regulatory purposes, and we will have to continue to send our results to the mainland. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so just to clarify then, right? So we will continue throughout the next at least minimum month and going forward to wait for the samples to be sent to the mainland, then tested, and then updated to any dashboard that's developed. Is that correct?
Joanna, would you please answer that question? You're closer to this than I am.
Oh.
You're muted.
Unmute. Okay, sorry. Hi. The data will be coming back from the mainland, and yes, that will be what our process is in the near future.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Back to the Senate.
Okay, Senator Misalucha.
Thank you, Chair. So I know that part of the process is to pump up the water, and I remember reading about a report that the water may have leached into the tubes. So I'm just wondering whether you've discounted that possibility, because even if you continue to pump and whatever the tubes are made of, whether it's plastic or something, and there's still leaching going on, then it's almost like a forever cycle. So I'm wondering whether you've discounted that possibility, you've completely eliminated the possibility of leaching, and have we mitigated that risk?
Yes, ma'am. So we have to assume at this time that there is fuel still in the unsaturated zone that may be making its way down to the water table. But the water that we're pulling out, we have a multiple barrier system, as Matt Carano had alluded to make sure that we're not pulling contaminants out of the well. The well intake is 16 feet below the water table, and the contaminants float on the surface. And so what we've done is we've skimmed the surface to lessen the concentration at the surface, and we've boomed in the well around to keep the contamination away from the area immediately above where the pumps pull the water. So the objective is to pull the cleanest water possible out of the well so that we can prolong the life of the granular activated carbon in the system that's there for the protection of the environment. The carbon, we're not using that as a means to harvest fuel. We'll do that in the well, but we're being protective of the water quality that we're pulling out of the well by taking it deep below the contaminated water surface.
And Senator, if I may add, I
Yes,
think that
please.
there are two distinctly kind of different tracks. And if the report that you're referring to is what I'm familiar with, I think early on and continually, there was a concern that the water that made its way to people's homes. That
Yes, I think that's the report I'm referring to.
Okay, and if that's the concern, we in fact have a testing protocol for that before the advisories are going to be lifted. And I'll just give you an example. When the distribution lines are flushed, as we said, or purged, drained and filled, those pipes do have plastic components to them in as well. And some of the testing did look for any type of residual stickiness is the only way I can really put it. And then when they go into the homes and then they flush out of the faucets, it's not that they just flush and then take the sample when it just moved. Because as we all know, when we go to sleep at night, for instance, our pipes soak, right? The water doesn't move. And so the testing process before we, clear a zone is to actually have the water flushed, then sit for 24 hours and test it, and then sit again for another couple of days and test it again, so that we can really rule out that any of this leaching process. And I would just like to say that, part of that too, especially Department of Health is very concerned with human health, and that a big part of that is long-term effects. So as part of the process too, there is going to be long-term monitoring on that side. So I just don't want to conflate the two. Travis was talking specifically from the well, and we have protocols in place for that. But I think the report, like you kind of indicated through a nod, about it possibly being in the homes and through like my refrigerator pipes, for instance, we do have a protocol for that to ensure that before we clear the area, that the testing takes into account the possibility of it kind of having stuck.
So Matt, just to clarify, so the leaching did not happen at all in the wells. The leaching just went to the pipes that were going to people's homes.
So when we talk about leaching,
the tubes, right?
Yeah, the tubes. Well, it's a little bit different of a situation. In the well, you think about it, it goes in, it's kind of this rock well, and then it's these huge pipes. To me, it's huge because it's not like what I've seen in my home, right? These big metal pipes and these big pumps, and those go directly to the filter. So while it's always possible that material will stick onto, pipes, it's very different with high velocity and big turnover. Where I think people have expressed concern, was definitely as it slows down, as the water slows down when it goes through the system and sits in plastic pipes, that those are the places where you might get this potential leaching. And, our sampling protocols before we clear the areas, and what we've obligated the Navy to do is really look for that. We want to make sure that that's not the case. And again, to my point earlier, that we never know until we know. That's why we have to do long-term monitoring too.
But as it is, you feel comfortable that we have the necessary protocols to mitigate that risk. So we don't constant monitoring that you have.
Yeah, it's all about risk mitigation and level of confidence necessary for people to feel secure about the water that comes out of their tap. And our drinking water programs and the command have been working very hard to try to identify what those testings could be, so that by the time the advisory is lifted, the department is very confident that that water is safe to drink.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, if I may just add to Matt's comments. Am I on?
Yeah, please proceed. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Again, very good question. And again, I think both of y'all alluded to, the safety of the people is absolute. And we're not done just because we lifted the advisory. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that our testing of the homes, of all homes, we're going to be continuing them. We have a 5% random sampling for 3 months afterwards. And then we're going to do 10% for a 6-month period. And so there'll be constant monitoring of the systems after families move back into the home. And so that is one of the added protocols that I just want to make sure. I don't know if it's advertised, if we've done a great job advertising it, but there's still testing that's going to follow to ensure the confidence and trust that the residents have with the water distribution system.
Thank you. Thank you, Admiral.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Representative Ganaden.
Good morning, all. Thank you to the chairs and to our presenters. I have a question for Mr. Lau at the Board of Water Supply.
Go ahead, Representative.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your continued service to our community. You mentioned earlier that 3 wells continue to not be in operation with the Board of Water Supply. I'm just asking for a brief kind of unofficial update as to the Board of Water Supply's plan to potentially reopen Halawa Shaft, IAEA well, or not, after hearing today's presentation. Also, the specific percentage that urban Honolulu is now operating at, like, in less capacity, and whether or not the Board of Water Supply has taken a stance on a moratorium on water permits in urban Honolulu. The reason being, this affects, as you know, our economy throughout the state. So a lot of us who are concerned about development in our community, I represent District 30, which includes Pearl Harbor, Halawa, Lower Kalihi. There are many plans. I'm not sure how far along many of them are with receiving their water permits. This is of great concern to the building community. Don't want to let the public who's watching think that a discussion of the economy comes over human health. That's not exactly at all what I'm discussing here, but just any update. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And if I miss any of the many parts of your question, please remind me to go back and answer the question. I think the first question is, based on the discussion and presentation today, are we confident in reopening our Halawa Shaft, IAEA wells, and Halawa wells? Simple answer is no. I think there's still a lot of investigation and data to be collected to determine that whether or not we can safely reopen those 3 wells. And the simple reason is that what we've seen experienced by the poor Navy families and workers on the base is something that we cannot allow to occur with our broader, larger Honolulu water system and our AEN and Halawa water systems, because we do not have the kind of resources that can deal with the situation that the Navy is currently dealing with. And because our system is so vast, all the way from Halawa all the way to Hawaii Kai and out to IAEA to Hikaha Street, we cannot afford to take on that risk. The other concerns, I guess the other situation too, with 3 wells shut down, Halawa Shaft represents about 20% of our supply for urban Honolulu. So we're about 20% short there in capacity. And IAEA Halawa wells represent about 50% of the capacity for our IAEA Halawa system. So we're under stress conditions. We're having to make up the pump water that we normally would pump from those 3 locations by pumping other wells a little longer and harder. So we have to watch how that turns out, especially as we're entering into the summer months when we know that water demand traditionally peaks in the summer. And that's where we're going to probably enter into periods of requests for voluntary, perhaps mandatory water conservation for people to make sure that the demand for water or what water people are using for water does not exceed our available supply. Because remember, our water system consists of wells, sources, pipes, tanks, and in those pipes and tanks, if you don't have enough water out of your source of supply, which comes from groundwater for the Board of Water Supply, then those water in the pipes and tanks won't be able to meet the demand. And what we'll see is during the peak demand periods, we may see periods of low pressure for some of our customers. We'll know that the tank levels might be staying low and not recovering. There could be periods of time where some of our customers may experience complete water outage until we can get the demand back down to match the supply. So supply and demand have to be able to equal each other. And Halawa Chef was a big source for us. So we are looking at that very carefully. And that's just to meet the existing water customers' needs. And part of our requirements are that we have to take care of the demands of our existing water customers before we allow additional uses on the water system. And that leads up to your question about moratorium. We are currently.
Mr. Lau, so
Yes.
we have a hard stop for the Senate at 11.
Okay.
So can you
sorry.
summarize your answer in a minute?
Yes, Chair. So the issues of moratoriums, it is still being evaluated. How much additional new customers can we add onto the system without the system running into frequent problems, especially during the summer, running out of water or running on low pressure? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as we wrap this up, we'd like to again thank the Senate, again Chair Keokolole for setting this up, and all of our colleagues and co-chair conveners. If you guys have additional questions, I know we didn't get to everyone's, please send it to Chair Keokolole's email. He's offered to accept them and turn them in. You can't send it to me, and we'll just send it to him. But if you feel inclined, you can send it directly to him. Wanted to again thank the Senate IT staff, House IT staff, and all those that made it possible. And again, all the presenters being here, we appreciate your time. We know that this is going to be an ongoing thing, and Senator Keokolole, myself, and all of our joint Senate chair counterparts are committed to seeing this through. So again, I want to thank everybody. I know Senate, you guys have to go for your session. And again, thank you and aloha.
Thank you, everyone.